Hello, everybody, and welcome into the OKPreps Kickoff Show for Week 1. I'm your host, the director of OKPreps.com, Michael Knight. And over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to be going over some of the top matchups in the state of Oklahoma going into Week 1. We'll look at the top 10 games according to OKPreps.com. We'll hear from some of the coaches in those matchups as well. We'll give you 5 players to watch going into Week 1. We'll give you some teams on the rise, some answers to some of your questions, and we'll also make some predictions before we get out of here. And I should mention the players to watch segment. You definitely need to check that out because we listed about 3 players. 3 out of the 5 ended up being Player of the Week candidates. Brendan Presley from Bixby, Chase Rickey from Lincoln Christian, and Dorian Plumley from El Reno. All 3 of those guys were talked about here on the OKPreps Kickoff Show, and all 3 ended up being Player of the Week candidates for Week 0. So we knew a little bit going into last week. We'll see if we can do it again this week. But nevertheless, those 5 players that we're going to give you later on in the program are 5 of the best players in the state of Oklahoma, regardless of what happens on Friday night. All right, let's dive into it, and we start things off with our top 10 games in Oklahoma for Week 1. If you haven't done so already, you can check them out right now on OKPreps.com. And speaking of that, if you haven't done so already, you should hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. You'll get all of our kickoff shows. You'll get all of the highlights, everything that we put out video-wise. You'll be able to get. Just go to our YouTube channel, go to search OKPreps on YouTube, hit subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll get all of our great video content. But now it's time to look at the top 10 games of the week, and we start with our number 1 matchup, a big-time matchup between 6A Division number 2 Booker T. Washington and 5A number 2 Bishop Kelly, as Booker T. Washington goes on the road to take on Bishop Kelly. Booker T. has already lost 1 game on the season. They opened up their season on Saturday night against North Little Rock over in Bentonville, Arkansas. They lost 19-0. It should be mentioned that Booker T was without their star player, Gentry Williams, who was out with a concussion. And we mentioned him as a player to watch, and he makes a huge difference on this Booker T team. If he's on the field, that game would have been completely different. The Hornets definitely would not have been shut out. They would have been able to put up some points on the scoreboard, but nevertheless, they lose to North Little Rock 19-0. Now they bounce back this week, going on the road to take on Bishop Kelly. Booker T was able to beat Bishop Kelly last year 24-14. That game came after losing to North Little Rock 29-28. Booker T, that game was close last year. They were able to pull away in the 4th quarter to win it 24-14. It should be noted, though, that while this is the top game, both of these teams are not at full strength. They're both missing some key pieces to what they're hopeful is a championship run this season. Both teams not at 100%. You would like to be at 100% for Week 1, but unfortunately that is not the case for Booker T. Washington and Bishop Kelly. Moving on to our number 2 game, that features a huge matchup in 6A1 as defending state champion and number 1 ranked Broken Arrow goes on the road to take on number 4 Union. Both of these teams went down to Texas to kick off their season last week. Union went on the road to play Mansfield Lake Ridge on Friday night. They lost a heartbreaker 47-44. Broken Arrow, meanwhile, beat Mansfield High on Saturday night by a score of 42-13. They had not 1 but 2 pick sixes in the win over Mansfield High. Last year, Broken Arrow dominated Union in the season opener. In Week 0, they won it at home 33-10. But it should be noted that Broken Arrow has only won 1 time at Union, and that came back in 1986. That's the only time the Tigers have been able to go on the road and beat the Union Redskins. They've only had a couple of wins over the last 2 decades. But as we've seen in this matchup, while the series edge definitely goes to Union, these 2 teams are closer than ever before as far as competitiveness year in and year out. Our number 3 matchup is a matchup taking place on Thursday night, and we go over to the Oklahoma City area for this one as 2A's number 2 Millwood goes on the road to take on 3A's number 1 Heritage Hall. Again, this game kicking off on Thursday night. Millwood beat Heritage Hall in the season opener a year ago. Again, that game was on Thursday as well, with Millwood winning it 30-20. Before that, they had not played since 2007, but Millwood was able to prevail in a game that really was sloppy from start to finish. There were a lot of penalties on both sides. Marcus Major had a big long run early on in the ball game, but other than that, Millwood, they weren't able to do a whole lot. Heritage Hall wasn't able to do a whole lot. There were a lot of penalties on both sides of the ball, but at the end of the day, Millwood was able to win that game 30-20. Their winning streak stayed intact. Now, they're trying to start a new winning streak this year while Heritage Hall looks to continue theirs after bouncing back from that loss to Millwood, rattling off 13 straight wins towards a 3A state championship. Our number 4 game is a rivalry clash between 6A2's number 1 Bixby and 6A1's number 3 Jenks. Both teams 1-0 on the season. Both teams successful down in Mansfield last week as Jenks shut out Mansfield Legacy 38-0. Bixby blew out Mansfield Timberview 77-44. As far as this matchup, it's very similar to Union and Broken Arrow, as those two programs are very close to one another, but yet Union holds a massive edge. The same can be said in the rivalry between Bixby and Jenks. These two teams are very competitive with one another year in and year out. However, Jenks holds a huge edge in the series. In fact, Jenks won last year 28-14. Bixby has only one win against the Trojans since 1977. So the edge is definitely going to Jenks there. I'm thrilled about this matchup. It's going to be great after seeing what both teams did last week in week 0 down in Texas. First, you had Jenks showing out on Thursday with a shutout victory over Mansfield Legacy. What does Bixby do to follow that up? They put up 70 points in 3 quarters against Mansfield Timberview. They ended up winning that game by 33 points. It's not very often that you give up 44 points and still walk away with a 33-point victory, but that's exactly what the Bixby Spartans did. Our number 5 game is 2A's number 8 Jones hosting 3A's number 2 Lincoln Christian as Lincoln goes on the road to the west side to take on Jones. Both teams got wins last week. Both teams scored 50-plus in their openers as Lincoln, they had no problem beating Inola. Jones had no problem beating OCS, scoring 50-plus on both sides, scoring 50-plus points in the season opener. Lincoln Christian beat Jones last year 34-19. I was there for that meeting, but these two have been relatively close over the last few seasons. They've split their last 4 meetings. One of those meetings came in the 2015 Class 3A semifinals, but now with Jones down in 2A, this becomes a huge non-district clash. But I love these offenses. They flexed their muscles last week in week 0, what they're able to do. And when it comes to these matchups this week, I'm thrilled about this matchup because I'm an offensive guy. I love points. I love shootouts, and that's exactly what we may end up getting with Lincoln Christian going on the road to take on Jones. Our number 6 matchup features number 3 Bishop McGuinness out of Class 5A going on the road to take on 6A Division II's number 4 Del City. Del City had no problems with Bishop McGuinness last year in the season opener, winning that one 47-7. That game definitely, showed what Del City was about. They had a good season last year. Bishop McGuinness, they were able to bounce back and make a good run in Class 5A. These teams used to be Class 5A rivals, but now you have Del City up in 6A2. They may end up dropping back down to 5A, and they'll probably end up being rivals once again. But this will be the season opener for both teams. Del City winning last year by 40 points over McGuinness. I'm willing to go out on a limb. It's not a massive limb to say that this year's matchup is going to be much, much closer. For our number 7 matchup, we go down to Class A as number 8 Crossings Christian comes to Owasso to take on number 3 Rejoice Christian. These two teams played not once but twice last year, with Rejoice Christian getting the win both times. It was a very close game in the regular season, with Rejoice getting a very close victory over Crossings, and then they would meet again in the Class A quarterfinals, and Rejoice would handle their business on the way to the Class A semifinals, and they ended Crossing Christian's season a year ago in the quarters, and that was the best season that Crossings has had in school history. So they're probably going to be a little salty coming over to Owasso to take on Rejoice. Crossings got their season kicked off last week. Rejoice Christian had a scrimmage against Beggs, so this matchup is going to be the first for Rejoice as they open up their 2019 campaign. It's the first time we get to see Rejoice Christian on the field in a real game without star running back Andrew Crow, who was a finalist for last year's Player of the Year award for OKPreps.com. So what happens with Rejoice offensively, defensively, when they have to play without Andrew Crow? And this Crossings team, again, brings plenty of talent coming back. They're going to be salty after losing not once but twice to Rejoice. This is definitely a matchup to watch in Class A that could tell us a story of how Class A will eventually fall out, with those two teams both having state championship aspirations. Our number 8 matchup is another top 10 matchup in Class 2A, as number 4 Vian will travel to take on number 10 Eufaula. Vian has been dominant in this series. They beat Eufaula last year 44-6. The Wolverines have won now 8 in a row against Eufaula. This will be the season opener for both teams. And if you checked out our Class 2A preview and championship predictions, I like Vian. I think that this is a team that knows what it takes to win the big game. They know what it takes to go far into the playoffs. They know what it takes to contend for a championship. And I think that they end up making it to the championship game eventually, but it's a long road away to get there. And we're going to find out. And we're going to find out just how good this Vian team is early on, specifically here in the month of September, because they have huge games on the schedule. They have the Eufaula game on Friday night, but then they have another non-district game against Lincoln Christian coming up. Then later on, I believe in the district opener, they open up their district play against Spyro, which is a top 5 team in Class 2A. So we're going to find out early, and we're going to find out immediately just how good this Vian team is in 2019. Our number 9 matchup features 6A Division II, number 5 Sapulpa going on the road to take on 5A, number 4 Edison. Sapulpa had no problems with Edison last year, 34-13. If you remember, Edison had a slow start to the season last year, going 1-4. They would rally by winning 5 consecutive games and make it into the playoffs. Sapulpa, both Sapulpa and Edison plan on making it back to the playoffs this year. Sapulpa plans on contending for a championship and playing spoiler. And this is really an interesting matchup when you look at it from the dynamic of the teams themselves. Sapulpa, they have to feel like an outsider, chasing Bixby, chasing Booker T. Washington. The same can be said about Edison, chasing Bishop Kelly, chasing Collinsville, chasing Claremore, some of the other top teams on the east side in Class 5A. Both of these teams want the recognition as being playoff contenders, championship contenders. They face each other on Friday night, and you'll get a great matchup individually, as Sapulpa has a great quarterback in Eli Williams. Edison has a great running back in Savion Morrison, so a great matchup offensively. Both defenses will have their work cut out for them for sure. And then our final game in the top 10, Class 4A, number 1 Tuttle. The defending champs in 4A will go on the road to take on 3A's number 8 Kingfisher. Tuttle beat Kingfisher 26-14 last week in their season. Tuttle beat Kingfisher 26-14 last season. They beat Newcastle last week 41-7 in their season opener. This will be Kingfisher's season opener this year, and this may be a tough one for Kingfisher because they have a lot to replace off of last year's team. A lot of talented players graduated from that offense specifically, and now you have the defending 4A champs coming to town. It could end up being a long night for Kingfisher and the Kingfisher fans there as they open up their season against the 4A defending state champions. Before we move on and look at some players to watch, let's hear from some coaches about all these top 10 matchups. You've heard my opinion on them. Now let's hear from the coaches themselves, and let's start with our number 1 game of the week, and that's Bishop Kelly playing host to Booker T. Washington. And we start with the home team, Bishop Kelly head coach J.J. Tapana. Here's his thoughts on the matchup with Booker T.
Well, obviously we're real familiar with them. I've been here a long time. We've been playing them quite a bit. I've played them since the year 2000, I think, and they're the same Booker T that they always are. Athletic, fast, crazy fast on defense. Always have, the explosive offensive players with all the stars by their name. So, so they're no different. Well coached. Brad's an awesome human being and an awesome coach. And so, very well coached. So when you initially click on the film, you could see in the scrimmages that Gentry's a really dynamic athlete that's going to be difficult to deal with. And their offensive line's getting better. They've got great linebackers, great skill kids. Their defensive line's getting better. So, so it's a handful, man. It's a handful, and they're doing things right on both sides of the ball, obviously, So watching them on film against North Little Rock, Gentry didn't play in that game, and so I think, it's a pretty shock to the system, when your quarterback a few days before a big opener isn't able to play. It kind of slows down the things that you wanted to put in, you wanted to do. So I'm kind of afraid that we're going to get to see some things that they were holding for North Little Rock, and we're going to get to see them this week, So we'll see. It'll be a fun game. We're ready to play. We're ready to get the season started.
And on the other side of the matchup, you have Booker T. Washington looking to bounce back from Saturday's 19-0 loss to North Little Rock over in Bentonville. What better way to bounce back than by going on the road to take on a highly ranked team in Class 5A with Bishop Kelly unveiling a brand new stadium, brand new press box, and plenty of fans expected for this clash between two Tulsa Titans. Here's Booker T. Washington head coach Brad Caleb on the matchup with Bishop Kelly.
Just a very disciplined team. They don't make very many mistakes, and that's what JJ, that's what he does over there. And like I said, they're not the most athletic team. And I don't know pass the eye test, but man, they're so disciplined and don't make mistakes. And the offense that he runs is a ball control offense that to kind of keep him in the game. He's not a team that he don't have 3 or 4 big time receiver where he can get the ball to those guys. He got a running game. Like I said, they're very poised. So we'll see a lot of that this week. Despite I know his running back. I don't know if he's going to play or not. I heard he was. I heard he wasn't. So it doesn't matter. They still play very well. So we just don't have to just kind of eliminate mistakes, or we're going to see the same result next we did last year. And because man, they like I said, they're well disciplined, well coached. And we're going to go and we'll have to play over there. And so hopefully we can kind of jump on them fast and kind of make them throw the ball to catch up. That's not their strength, and that's what we're going to try to do this Friday.
Without a doubt, the best game taking place on Thursday is Heritage Hall playing host to Millwood. We'll be in the house for that one. You can look for the highlights on OKPreps.com. But before we get to all of that, here's Heritage Hall head coach Brett Bogert on the matchup with Millwood.
Yeah, they're fired up to say the least. We did my dad and I were talking about it the other day. We did the math. We hadn't played a revenge game actually since 2015 against Davis, because Davis clipped us in 2014 and got the payback on them in 15, and then obviously Cassia got us in 16 in the playoffs, so we didn't get to play them again. So to say the least, they're fired up for a little revenge. Been a great summer and great 2-a-days, and it's easy to keep focused when you got a team like Millwood, especially in a revenge game coming up first on your schedule.
Class 3A's number 2 Lincoln Christian is hoping to contend for a state championship and dethrone Heritage Hall and Brett Bogert. But before they do that, they have to go on the road to take on 2A's number 8 Jones. We caught up with their head coach, Jerry Rickey, to talk about the matchup against the Longhorns.
Well, I think that, there's a lot of people probably expecting a lot of points, but both of us play really good defense. And our defense is playing pretty good. They have outstanding defense. They have a structure that allows their kids to fly to the ball. And I know they preach that at Jones. We've played them a lot over the past few years, and they've been good at that. They're really good at offense as well. Their quarterback is he's a young guy, but he's really talented. He throws the ball well. They have some good receivers. The quarterback they moved to receiver is doing a really good job for him. He's very versatile, and we expect a great matchup. It's at their place on the road, and we know we're going to get the best version of Jones, which is a really good version.
Last year, Del City got out to a fast start by beating Bishop McGuinness 47-7. Can we expect the same thing this year? Well, probably not, but Del City definitely has the confidence to win the football game on Friday, and we talked with their head coach, Mike Dunn, going into the matchup.
Yeah, well, I think this game has definitely turned into a really good rivalry. You know, one of the better rivalries in the state. You know, it seems like when we were in 5A, we were playing that first game every year, and then playing in the playoffs every year. So, no, yeah, we didn't expect what happened last year to really happen. We felt good about our chances and knew that it was going to be a really good football game. And you know, I don't think people realize, but it was 21-0 with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Then it just kind of snowballed. It was a football game up until about the last 10 minutes. Then just some things went bad, and for them, and we got some breaks, and just kind of how it worked out. But we've been working on making sure our kids know that that's not an expectation. That's something. This is going to be a 4-quarter football game, and we've been preparing for that for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and trying to get it through their minds that they better be prepared to play a full game. So we're excited about the matchup. I mean, anytime that you can start out with a good team like McGuinness, obviously it's going to get us prepared for a good district too. So we're excited about it, and I think we really do fare well against each other. So they've got some good athletes, we've got some good athletes, and you're looking at a lot of good Division I football players going to be out there on the football field on Friday night. So we're excited about it.
The game of the week in Class A is number 3 Rejoice Christian hosting number 8 Crossings Christian. Rejoice Christian head coach Brent Marley joined the program to talk about the matchup against Crossings and trying to get yet another win against this team.
Oh, yeah, extremely excited. I mean, it's going to become a rivalry in Class A. It's an East-West matchup that I think that is one of the better, top 10 games probably in Class A in the state. And just open up with them game 1 and winning by 1 last year, and then going there in the third round in the quarterfinals and winning again and ending their season, I think is created for a big matchup tomorrow night. I know they're going to be coming here ready to go and wanting to kind of get a little, I guess, revenge, so to speak. But, our kids and their kids don't have to get up for this one. I think naturally for Class A, it's just going to happen. If you can't get up for this one, you're not going to.
Expectations are high at Edison this year. They ranked number 4 in our preseason rankings. They have one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the state of Oklahoma back. They have plenty of other talent around them. They have high expectations for sure going into 2019. But up first, they have a tough test against Sapulpa, another team with plenty of high expectations. Edison head coach Tony Daniels talks about this matchup against the Chieftains.
I think that everybody. The buzz, having around, of course, Savion, but not to mention Savion, but a lot of guys that we have that are returning. The buzz around here, around the school spirit, the community, the coaching staff, the players, just everywhere. Everywhere you go, oh, yeah, you've got that running back that's over there. And then getting into conversations with them and talking about 27 seniors that we have coming back. So it's nice to have that many that come back, especially a lot of them that have had a lot of playing experience, but we're definitely excited.
All right, now it's time to give you 5 players to watch heading into Week 1's games, whether it's Thursday or Friday night. We have a great slate of games all across the state and a perfect stage for some of the state's best players to shine bright underneath those Friday night lights. Let's start alphabetically, and we go up to Owasso as they take on Fayetteville in a huge game on Friday night. And the player to watch is Deuce Mayberry, the defensive back from the Owasso Rams. He's already committed to Kansas. He's one of the top players in Oklahoma's 2020 class, and it's easy to tell why, as he is, without a doubt, the best cover corner in Oklahoma right now. He completely shuts down one side of the field, and he'll have his work cut out for him, as Fayetteville has one of the top wide receivers in the state of Arkansas coming to town to take on the Rams. As Fayetteville, they had a lot of success throwing the football last year in their victory over Owasso. So Deuce Mayberry and the Owasso Ram defense definitely has their hands or has their work cut out for them against Fayetteville in that passing attack. But Deuce Mayberry definitely gives the Rams an advantage, being one of the best players on the football field. We already mentioned him once, but let's go to Sapulpa quarterback Eli Williams as another player to watch here, as the Sapulpa Chieftains have high expectations, and why not when you have one of the best quarterbacks in the state returning to lead your offense. Eli Williams, the progression that he has made from his sophomore to junior, and now from his junior to senior year as a quarterback, as a pure passer, has been amazing to watch. It doesn't take long to be impressed by him as an athlete, as one of the best athletes in the state. But his potential at the quarterback position specifically, that should bring fear into the minds of defensive coordinators in 6A Division II, as he has the potential to be one of the best quarterbacks in Oklahoma. It could end up being a big year for Eli Williams and Sapulpa, but it starts on Friday with a tough test against Edison and a very talented secondary for the Edison Eagles. We stay in 6A Division II, and we stay at the quarterback position as well with our next player to watch, Bixby quarterback Mason Williams. As Mason Williams, all he did to kick off his junior season was throw for north of 400 yards and 8 touchdown passes, 6 of them going to Brennan Presley, who was a player to watch last week. Mason Williams, a player to watch this week. And it's going to be interesting to see what he does this week going into that matchup against Jenks. Jenks, obviously very successful last week defensively. They held Mansfield Legacy to just 65 yards of total offense. So what is Mason Williams and this Bixby offense going to be able to do on Friday when they take on the Trojans? I definitely still want to see what he does. And he was beat up against Jenks last year. That was his first ever start at the quarterback position, was in the season opener against Jenks. I'm sure he's excited to get another crack at the Trojans. Another player to watch is Bishop Kelly defensive lineman Montrell Cozart. We mentioned that game of the week, that big-time matchup between Bishop Kelly and Booker T. Washington, and a lot will be predicated on the battle in the trenches, that battle on the line of scrimmage. Montrell Cozart, a fantastic defensive lineman. He has the chance to really break things open, and if he's able to disrupt things in the Booker T. Washington backfield, it might be a long night for the Hornets. They want to get things going offensively. Cozart has the chance to completely dismantle that line of scrimmage and really change the game plan for Booker T. Washington offensively. He's certainly a player to watch heading into week one's clash with Booker T. Washington. And then our final player to watch, we go to that Union Broken Arrow matchup, to that defensive side of the ball on Broken Arrow's side with Miles Slusher. We mentioned Deuce Mayberry earlier being one of the top players in the state of Oklahoma. Miles Slusher might just be the best defensive player overall in the state of Oklahoma at that safety position for the Broken Arrow Tigers. He had a pick 6 in last week's win over Mansfield High. He also deflected a pass that ended up being intercepted and returned for a touchdown. And Union had their way. They lost the game to Lake Ridge 47-44, but in that matchup, they were able to throw the ball, and they were able to throw the ball consistently and with plenty of efficiency. But going up against this Broken Arrow secondary, and specifically Miles Slusher roving around back there, it's going to be a little different for Union throwing the football. So he's definitely going to be a player to watch, and that matchup specifically is going to be one to watch. The Union passing game going against the Broken Arrow secondary. Those are your 5 players to watch here this week going into week 1 as we move on to our next segment with teams on the rise. And in this one, we look at some of the teams that are on the outside looking in on the top 10 and that are knocking on the door. And it could just take one win on Friday night to get them into the top 10 rankings going into next week. And we start in Class 4A with Central, a team in the Tulsa Public School system. Central absolutely dominated their opponent last week. Their quarterback, KT Owens, threw for over 300 yards, had a real nice debut there for the Central Braves in their season opener. They're taking on Memorial, and Central definitely has to be considered one of those sneaky teams in Class 4A. If you overlook them, you'll be making a mistake going into the rest of the year, as this team has the chance to be pretty special. In Class 2A, I like Hugo a lot. I think that they're a team that's right on the cusp of being ranked. There's just a lot of really good teams in Class 2A, and they have a chance to make a statement on Friday when they go on the road to take on Kingston. That's a great team in Kingston. So we'll see what happens as Hugo goes on the road. If they're able to pull off the win, you'll definitely see Kingston drop out of the top 10 rankings and Hugo jump right back in. And then our final one is Hominy down in Class A. Kind of same situation as Class A, just simply has a lot of really good teams. Hominy is one of them. They're right there knocking on the door. And what a huge opportunity for them to show why they deserve to be there. They'll be taking on a Cleveland team that was in this discussion last week as one of the teams on the rise. Cleveland got a huge win over Glenpool. They play host to Hominy in a huge rivalry game. What a big opportunity for Hominy to get a win over Cleveland, their rival, and possibly jump into the Class A top 10 rankings going into week 2. Now it's time to answer some of your questions. You can send us your questions on Twitter. Just tweet at us at OKPrepsTV throughout the week, and we'll answer them here on the show. You can also send them to us on Facebook. Ask us your questions going into the week. We'll answer them right here on the OK Preps Kickoff Show. Our first question comes to us from Twitter, and it was a question about Heritage Hall. Can the Chargers win a third consecutive state championship? They have to replace Connor Carey, and this person mentioned how Connor Carey might have been the most underrated player in the state of Oklahoma. He wasn't to us. He was a finalist for our Player of the Year award, as it didn't take long to see that he was an absolute game changer for Heritage Hall. His breakout performance came in that season opener against Millwood. Who's going to step up and have that breakout performance this year for Heritage Hall? The Chargers are number one for a reason. They have plenty of talent coming back. They do have to replace Connor Carey, but going into last year, we didn't know about Connor Carey. We knew about Billy Ross at the running back position, and then all of a sudden, Connor Carey ended up being the guy at that position. So I have no doubt that Heritage Hall will be able to find somebody else to fill that void going into the 2019 season. There are plenty of good teams in Class 3A, but until someone knocks off Heritage Hall, it's tough to pick against the Chargers for sure. What was the biggest surprise from week 0? This question coming to us from Facebook. The biggest surprise for me was a team that I saw in person last week, and that was Metro Christian against Broken Bow. Came away very impressed with Metro Christian's defense. I think that when you talk about Metro Christian, the first thing that you always want to go to is the offensive side of the ball, and specifically the play from the quarterback position. They're one of the best in the state of Oklahoma year in and year out. However, the defense was absolutely dominant against Broken Bow. Broken Bow could do absolutely nothing against Metro Christian, so that definitely was a surprise to me after week 0's games. Is Metro Christian's defense has the opportunity to be one of the best in Class 2A. Our final question, what's your favorite matchup this week? Look, we have a lot of great matchups. If you look at our top 10 games, you might be wondering where some other games are, and there are plenty of games that didn't make the list. And that's a good problem to have, because we got great football being played all over the state of Oklahoma. But when it comes down to it, I love that Jones-Lincoln Christian game. I mentioned it when I was talking about the matchup itself. I'm an offensive guy. I love points. I love touchdowns, shootouts, things like that. And we're going to get plenty of points in that matchup. Well, now that I say that, it'll probably be a defensive ball game. But chances are there's going to be plenty of points. So I love that Jones and Lincoln Christian matchup. And I think both teams have the opportunity to make a statement on Friday night with a big win. And you have to consider both of them state championship contenders in their respective classes. All right, let's make some picks. Let's throw the top 10 graphic back up on the screen, and we're going to run down these real quickly for you here as we wrap up this week's edition of the OK Preps Kickoff Show. Bishop Kelly hosting Booker T. Washington. I think Bishop Kelly gets a very, very close win over Booker T. I think that this game's going to be low scoring throughout. Don't expect a whole lot of points. Expect the defense to dominate on both sides of the ball. Broken Arrow against Union. Can the Tigers finally go on the road and beat the Union Redskins? I think they do. I think that Broken Arrow is the better team. I think that they handle their business. And Union, they have to figure some things out defensively before I'll be able to trust them, especially in a game against Broken Arrow, a very talented Tiger squad. Heritage Hall taking on Millwood. I like the Chargers in this one. I think that Heritage Hall, I think it's going to be close for 3 quarters, but I think the Chargers are going to pull away in the 4th. You have Jenks hosting Bixby. I think that both of these teams are very close to one another. I think that this is a great matchup between a great offense in Bixby and a very great defense in Jenks. I'm going with the Trojans, though, in a very close one. My favorite matchup, you had Lincoln Christian taking on Jones. I think Lincoln wins a close one. Like I mentioned, expect plenty of points on both sides of the ball. Our number 6 matchup, you have Bishop McGuinness taking on Del City. Definitely think it's going to be closer than last year. Del City winning that one 47-7. I think Bishop McGuinness gets a little revenge. I love that running back that they have, Dominic Richardson. I think that McGuinness wins it. I think it's going to be close. Definitely not a 40-point victory coming on either side of the ball. Our number 7 game, Rejoice Christian hosting Crossings. I'm going with Rejoice here. Until Crossings beats Rejoice, no reason to pick against Rejoice, although they definitely have some questions to answer as far as who are going to be some of the playmakers that step up for them this fall. Vian taking on Eufaula. That's an easy one for me. I think Vian rolls again. They've dominated this series, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. Sapulpa taking on Edison. I think Sapulpa wins in a very close one. I think that game's going to be close throughout, but the Chieftains just a little too much offensively. And then finally, Tuttle going on the road to take on Kingfisher. Sorry, Kingfisher fans. I think Tuttle wins this one handily, probably by double digits, and they make it look easy in the process. They won by double digits last year, and Kingfisher had more firepower going into last year. So I still like Tuttle in this matchup a whole lot to continue that winning streak. Finally, before we get out of here, we definitely want to promote some things you can check out on OKPreps.com. We reminded you at the beginning of this show, please subscribe to our YouTube channel on OKPreps. Just search OKPreps on YouTube, hit subscribe, and you'll get all of our great content that we put out video-wise, including the OKPreps Kickoff show every single week. That also will get you all of our highlights that we shot. You can go back and check out the Metro Christian highlights over Broken Bow. This week we're going to be out at Heritage Hall as they take on Millwood. We'll be at Union as they take on Broken Arrow. We'll also be at Bishop Kelly as they take on Booker T. Washington. So you'll be able to check out all of those highlights on OKPreps.com. Also on our YouTube channel, you'll get our sit-down interview with Booker T. Washington wide receiver J.J. Hester as the Hornets stand out. The top available prospect in Oklahoma's 2020 class will announce his commitment. This will be coming on Thursday. So by the time this show has aired and published, he probably already will have made his announcement. But just know that you'll be able to see a sit-down interview with Hester on our YouTube channel as well. We'll also, over the weekend, have our weekend content. Every single week we update it. We'll do it again. We'll have our new top 10 rankings. We'll have new player of the week candidates. And then, of course, you can wrap up your weekend by listening to the OK Preps Roundup, recapping all the action from week 1. So if you haven't done so already, also subscribe to the OK Preps podcast series on iTunes for all of our great podcast content. My thanks goes out to all the coaches who joined us to give their thoughts on the matchups heading into week 1. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the OK Preps Kickoff Show. And please join us every single week. And don't kick off your week of high school football without checking in with us here on OK Preps. I'm your host, Michael Knight, and this has been another edition of the OK Preps Kickoff Show.